Do you think that white privilege exists?
Oh yeah.
Can,
Yes.
why do you,
Yes. 100%, yeah.
can you talk?
Because I mean the biggest thing, like when you talk about white privilege, even if you go back just like to World War II, after World War II, black soldiers who fought in World War II didn't get the GI Bill. White soldiers did. Those white soldiers used the GI Bill to buy houses and then pass that wealth down. But then on top of that, if you look, like, there are still racist people. As much as like we want to talk about, like, you know, being a post-race society, there was a lot of discussion about that. There are still racist people out there. Like, not all, just because you're white doesn't mean you automatically have an advantage, but like inherently, just based on how the country has progressed, the average white person starts off at a better starting point than the average black person. There's exceptions to every rule, but it's a sad fact in the United States.
Cooks, brother.
I think it's just inherent in the foundation of America. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Yeah, facts.
We really need to clear something up in that video about Ukrainians being super privileged. Obviously, we're white presenting, and obviously on all paperwork, in all stores, people see us as white people. So sure, we do benefit from white privilege in the United States and in certain European countries. But the thing is, this is not about the United States. That video was not about the United States. Not everything in the world revolves around the United States. The whole idea that Ukrainians are only being helped and are only liked and have it easy because we're white people is unreasonable and ludicrous. White privilege did not save us from being literal slaves. They had cotton fields here, they had wheat fields in Ukraine. We were enslaved. The exact same way as slavery worked here. Our white privilege didn't save us from multiple genocides. It did not save us from colonization. We've experienced some of the same things as any other nation that is not white. No, Ukrainians did not benefit from being white people. When people say things like, oh, Yemeni refugees have been waiting for 10 years. Yeah, you're again forgetting that the war in Ukraine has lasted 8 years before anybody blinked an eye. Nobody talked about us in the media. When they did, on a rare occasion, it was Nazis and civil war. Ukrainians did not qualify for asylum or refugee status anywhere because of our war. There were millions of displaced people in Ukraine during those 8 years. You guys act like the war started in 2022 and the world was like, oh my gosh, help, 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 Ukraine, the white people are struggling. There was 8 years of shit before that where nobody gave a fuck about us. A single, slightest fuck. When you say things like, oh, the world is only talking about Ukraine because you guys are white, you're also negating the effort that our president and his cabinet put into quite literally creating United 24 Media, which is a platform that consistently keeps screaming about everything that's happening. We created an awareness about the war in Ukraine platform. Our politicians constantly demand support. Our people literally created TikTok accounts with minimal English trying to keep the awareness going. People would stop, like, 9 months ago, 10 months ago, because the attention span of an average conflict is about a month. The weapons help that we're receiving has to do with the fact that we're quite literally stopping the Russian invasion and Russia from entering NATO. The US spent trillions of dollars every year on preparing to defend itself from Russia. And now it is annihilating Russia on the battlefield with no American lives lost, unless they're volunteers, for 3% of the yearly budget. That's why we're getting all the help. Now let's clarify the refugee situation. Yes, Ukrainians are getting work permits and things like that very fast. Now, after 8 years of not qualifying to be refugees to begin with, even though, again, there was an active war going on, whether you like it or not. Here's the reason why Europe is much more likely to grant Ukrainians ability to work and stuff like that. A, studies have shown that Ukrainians are less likely to ask for social welfare. 1. 2, the level of education in Ukraine is incredibly high, so our diplomas translate for specialties much easier than the diplomas of, say, Syria or Yemen. 3, in Ukraine, most kids learn English, German, and Ukrainian. Also Russian. Some kids learn Spanish. Some kids learn French. But you do that for 11 years of your schooling. By the time that you do get to, say, Germany, France, or Spain, you likely have the language quite a little bit covered. So it's easier to find employment. Most Ukrainians, again, according to polls, are planning on coming back to Ukraine. We're not asking for permanent residency, we're asking for temporary refugee status. Very different. Because most people in other wars did not have their government on their side, and most people in other wars did not have the means to come back home, or did not want to come back home, or did not see being able to come back home in the near future. Is a very low maintenance workforce that already comes to these countries having the basics of language or with a medium knowledge of language, and having diplomas based on Bolognian system that are easily translatable in Europe. That's why Ukrainians are getting jobs. That's why Ukrainians are getting temporary protection easier. So it's a fantastic thing for your average government to have temporary workers who are bringing a lot to the economy and are not asking for a lot back. What I'm trying to say with this rant is that yes, when a Ukrainian moves to a multicultural country, yes, they do acquire white privilege. But that's irrelevant in this situation. Because in the context of Ukraine, in the context of invasions, in the context of all of this, it didn't work. Our white privilege didn't make the world look at us in 8 years of war. It did not save us from slavery. It did not save us from genocides. It did not save us from colonization. It did not save us from imperialism. Did not save us from any of that. So when you say Ukrainians are privileged and people are only helping you because you're white, you're literally negating all of our history of no one giving a fuck about us. We were still white then. You're negating the fact that our entire country bent over backwards with informational outreach. People like myself quit jobs specifically so no one forgets, and specifically so the West helps. We created a whole freaking platform with our government. Our politicians started being active on social media, on Twitter, on stuff like that. The reason why this war is so discussed is because of Ukrainian people, is because of our effort, is because our politicians are on social media, is because we live in the age of TikTok. We were dismissed for almost a decade. We were still white then. You guys really, really, really need to make a distinction between having white privilege in a different country, which, again, most Ukrainians are not in a different country, and between being privileged and having white privilege in the context of, like, literally being white, being a white nation in Europe, because clearly we've been screwed times and times and times and times and again, just as much as people who aren't white. With that said, yes, on a level of, like, benefiting from white privilege overall in the United States, yes, white privilege. On a level of having white privilege as a nation in the war, no. You're literally discrediting everything that we've done and everything we've worked for, and you're also discrediting decades of people closing their eyes on everything that was happening to us by saying, oh, everyone's helping you because you're white people. We were white people this entire time. No one was helping us. It's irrelevant in the scenario in which you're trying to use it. Do you understand that?
Stop looking at my phone. Understand. Are you hard of hearing?
So if I slap you right now, are you calling the cops?
If you, first of all, okay, as soon as you reach to try to slap, I box some
If
shit.
you're the cops, don't believe me or you. I'm putting on the best fucking sob story I could ever put on in my life. The only thing that's gonna help you is witnesses.
I got my sister right here.
Okay, so please stop.
You know what she did? When the cops come, even if you call them, guess who they're gonna believe? Me, because of your skin color. And I will use that to my advantage. So settle down, big boy. Imagine every time something comes up, the person goes, well, I can call the cops on you. And even if I'm in the wrong, they're gonna believe me. Would you really take that person seriously? And then on top of that, if we have children, then what happens there? The dynamics on the nuances when it comes to that. You have to actually be out of your mind to date that. How was that an appropriate response? She should have been like, hey, I don't appreciate you talking to me like that. Look, I'm just trying to be nice to you. Not, hey, well, if the cops come, guess what? who are they gonna believe? In other words, you're gonna be dragged, you're basically potentially could be beaten up or taken advantage of, and no one's gonna really believe you because I'm the innocent white little girl.
This is just your friendly reminder that if you actually thought white privilege exists.
This video is for anyone who believes that white privilege doesn't exist. I'm not sure that one video can change someone's mind, so my goal here is simply to plant some seeds. I'm in my seed planting era, if you will, because if I can use this account and the platform that I have to cause one white person to go, that's some good points, then it's worth it. So Lauren, I hope you and anyone else that thinks like you stays and listens. White privilege is being able to say, I'm not really a political person, which is something that I hear from white people often. Being able to say that is an absolute privilege that Black, Indigenous, other people of color, disabled folks, and other marginalized communities simply do not have. White privilege is being able to walk into any cosmetic section and finding your shade of foundation. White privilege is not having, but should be having, difficult conversations with your young children about race and racism and how there are people in the world who will hate them solely because they have a little bit more melanin in their skin. White privilege is growing up and being able to own dolls that look like you, seeing Disney princesses that look like you. And yes, that has started to shift in recent years, but there are Black people today that can testify that when they were growing up, there was only one type of doll that looked like them, if there was any at all. And it wasn't even until 2009, I was in college at the time, that we got our first Black Disney princess, and she was a frog for most of the movie. White privilege is being able to walk into any hair salon and knowing without a shadow of a doubt you're going to be able to find a stylist who is competent in how to cut and style your texture of hair. White privilege is getting pulled over by a cop and the only thing that you're nervous about is getting a speeding ticket instead of worrying that you might say or do something that will get you killed. White privilege is not being followed closely around in a store because employees have assumed, based on the color of your skin, that you might steal something. White privilege is being given the benefit of the doubt in a lot of different situations solely just because you look like you're a nice person. White privilege is being able to travel freely to pretty much anywhere in the world and being welcomed by the people that live there. White privilege is interviewing for a job and not having to worry about your natural hair or if the interviewer has already written you off just because of the color of your skin. And that's not even close to being a complete list. Let me end with this. If you could choose to be Black, would you? That's kind of a rhetorical question because any white person that answers yes is a liar. Because you see and are fully aware of how Black people are historically and presently treated in this country and globally by white people and the systems that we uphold. And you know damn well you wouldn't choose that for yourself. That is white privilege. And it is absolutely sinister that in the year 2023, there are white people like you who are acting completely aloof to having said privilege. And that is white privilege.
My name's Kylie, and I'm obviously white. I grew up in a conservative white family, and I know there's been a lot of discourse about whether white people should talk about racism, and here's my argument for why I think that not only should we, but we have to. A lot of racism in white families occurs behind closed doors. I've been over at friends' parents' places and heard them say some pretty obscene things about people of color, assuming that I am on their side simply because I am white. Obviously, this makes for some awkward conversations when I do call them out, but point being, the depths of the racism and the darkness that seeps in deeply into these families can only, in my opinion, truly be exposed by other white people because they will never be their full racist selves around anyone who is not white. They like to save face publicly and say that they're not racist, but then again, if you go into their homes and you hear the things they say, that would suggest otherwise. I just encourage you, if you're a white person and you know people like this, please say something. Don't just ignore it for fear of conflict.
This could cost me followers, and if it does, I'm okay, because I know I've lost the right ones. In 2024, if you don't understand that white privilege doesn't equal financial privilege, there's a good chance it's because you choose to be willfully ignorant. White privilege doesn't mean that you grew up rich or that you didn't have a hard life. It's the concept that by the mere coincidence of you being born white or white presenting, that you have an inherent privilege. You're afforded certain benefits of the doubt that not everyone gets. It's the difference from a white person walking into a store and a customer salesperson walking up and saying, "Hi, can we help you find something today?" To a Black person walking in that same store with that same customer service person following them around because they looked kind of suspicious. It's the black family that can't leave their family photos hanging on the wall when they're selling their house because the home appraiser might undervalue their house by as much as $500,000. And for fuck's sakes, you've never had to apologize for being white. Had your parents fucked on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday, you wouldn't even be you. Rather, just acknowledge that the system that was designed by and for people that look like you has never been a level playing field. I hope this made it clear. Have a great fucking weekend.
This might be a hot take, but when we say white privilege, we don't mean that your life is easy. White privilege simply means that the color of your skin doesn't make your life harder. For instance, if you are someone who has darker skin, there are systemic issues that prevent you from achieving success in many instances. If you want to go to an elite university or get a high-paying job, statistically, you are less likely to get the position as a white person even having the exact same experience. And if a person of color does get the position, they are then told that the only reason they did was because of DEI or affirmative action. People with darker skin are more likely to be arrested, incarcerated for long periods of time, and wrongfully convicted. And they're more likely to live in poverty because of unfair housing practices and other methods of discrimination. You truly understand what white privilege is. There is no reason to get offended when someone brings up this topic because they aren't saying anything about you or your character. What this term means is that in such a diverse society, your skin color is not a barrier to success. And you are set up for success much better than any person of color because America was built on white supremacy to favor white people.
One of my all-time favorite white privileges is high trust society. The white community, collectively and globally, have fostered high trust into their societies. This is what we call earned privilege, because if we had a bunch of white people going around stealing stuff from other white people, we would not have a high trust society. Personally, I didn't grow up in high trust white society. I actually didn't even know it existed until my mid-20s. Let me give you some examples. So I've been in restaurants where I forgot my money or they only accepted cash and I didn't have cash on me, where the restaurant owners literally told me, take your time, go to an ATM, go to your house and grab your money, don't worry about it, just come back when you can pay. If you go to predominantly white areas, a lot less things are locked up, and that's because there is trust within the community. White people all over Europe have welcomed me wholeheartedly into their homes without even knowing me, and left me there unaccompanied while I house sat while they were on vacation in a foreign country. White people in America have invited me to their homes to refill up my water and propane for my RV for free. Well, anyways, I just wanted to come on here and say thank you to the white community for being fucking awesome.
If you do nothing else today, I urge you to watch the following all the way through. It is one of the best explanations of white privilege I have ever heard.
I am white, and on both sides of my family, we do not have any massive generational wealth. My mom's father is the only one of my 4 grandparents who we got any sort of generational wealth inherited from. And 99% of the wealth that we inherited from my grandfather was from selling his house. My grandfather was born in 1926 in rural North Carolina, and he was a 6'3" white man with blue eyes. Other than being white, my grandfather didn't have that many privileges. He was one of like 7 children. His mom didn't even get to high school level education, and his dad never went to college. They were not privileged in most other ways that we define privilege, but he was a white male in a very, very racist country. What his whiteness allowed him to do was work his way through college. At the time, there were colleges that weren't accepting black people, and he was accepted to college as long as he could pay for it. And he ended up getting a law degree and becoming very successful, and again, never hoarded any significant wealth, but bought a house outside of Washington, D.C. in the 50s in a neighborhood that was redlined. And actually, my mom, who was born in the 60s, remembers in the 70s when the first black family moved into their neighborhood, because it had literally been sectioned off and realtors would not sell to black families. And my mom, who is 58 years old, went to a year of segregated school. So for all of you saying it was so long ago, everyone has equal rights now, get over it. My mom remembers when the first black student joined her class in the 70s in Alexandria, Virginia. In 2015, my grandfather died, and we sold his house that he bought for around $100,000 in the 50s, and we sold it for $1 million. That money was divided among his children, and my family was able to get out of a lot of debt, and it completely reset my ability to go to private versus public school, my ability to afford tutors, my ability to become the educated person that I am. And it was all really because I have a white grandfather. Let me finish. Had my grandfather been black and had all of the other skills and background that he had, he couldn't have gone to the schools that he went to. he wouldn't have been hired in the jobs that he was. And he couldn't have bought the house that he did, that, 65 years later, put his family out of debt. So if anyone tries to tell you it's not that deep, it really is that deep. It goes so far back. Any small privilege that a white person has is probably, to some degree, due to their whiteness. And if you are a white person who has roots in the South, you definitely should have white guilt, and you definitely should be doing the work to understand how your privilege affects the people around you and how you can help level the playing field. And everyone tried to get all particular about these specific situations where a black person might have a privilege or a woman might have a privilege over a man. Those are isolated situations you're bringing up. We're talking about large-scale, mass, systematic issues. Now, yeah, legally, black people and white people should have the same exact rights and privileges. But they're playing catch up. Because if my family, like I said, had been black, we would never have gotten out of debt in 2015. I would never have been able to afford the school that I went to and live the lifestyle that I'm living right now.